Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Wilkie. Today we're at Long Beach, a track that really needs no introduction, but one I will introduce regardless. Close quarters action with no room to run or hide will give these drivers probably the most terrifying experience they've had all season long. And with this being the second to last round of the season before the runoffs in a couple weeks time, there's a whole lot to lose if you're some of these drivers. Now Charles, I think that both of us have had this race being outlined as one of the ones that was going to be the hardest on the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors schedule this season. So what do you like to explain the troubles that some of these drivers may face today?
I mean, it's basically very similar to what we experienced a few weeks ago at Belle Isle. Street circuit, very tight corners, very tight racing throughout the lap. There's a couple good places to pass coming down the end of the front stretch into turn one. It's a good passing zone to be heavy on the brakes, but you got to be very careful because the tire barriers that protect the drivers from hitting concrete walls kind of juts out in there, so you have to be pretty precise on your lines on exit. Curbs on the entry as well. And then you've got the little short straight going into the last little section, and then the hairpin at the end. So there's a few good spots that you can maybe make a couple of moves, but it's a pretty tight racetrack overall. Even with these small cars, there's just, as you see here as we're going through the fountain section, basically one lane. You're not really passing there, and so you have to be very careful, and you have to manage the curbs and your lines. So another one of those races where, you know, precision will be at a premium, and the more precise you are, the better result you possibly have.
We have had a whole bunch of different tracks that we've run on so far this season. We started the season all the way back on March 17th at Summit Point, which is pretty much, well, in terms of the scan, which is fairly old here in the world of iRacing, it feels like you're driving on a racetrack paved over a sinking swamp. Then we head off to Sebring, or as the drivers like to call it after that race, which was soaked heavily by rain, Lake Sebring, there back on March the 24th. We went to Okayama, Brands Hatch, Canadian Tire, where we had a whole bunch of UFO encounters during that that race, and then we head to Oschersleben, Rudskogen, Belle Isle, the street circuit that you mentioned a few moments ago there, Charles. Snetterton a couple weeks ago, Imola last time at Long Beach today, and then we're going to round off the season in 1 week's time at VIR on June the 2nd. So we've had a fantastic amount of different races and different issues for these drivers to try and focus on when it comes to these races and issues for us to bring up here on this broadcast. This track is, well, it's world famous, as I mentioned in my opening, but it's also, throughout the decades when Formula 5000 was racing on back in the 70s, when Formula 1 raced here many, many moons ago, and when IndyCar started all the way back in the 80s, and the many layouts that have been used here at Long Beach, it has a reputation as being a circuit that can bring out the best and the worst in drivers, and we're seeing that here in this qualifying session. Megan Overstreet, who we've seen come back to the series over the past few weeks, she's currently P2 in this qualifying session. That is a fantastic run from her. Yanchi Lin, as I say that, I was going to say that Yanchi Lin was in P1. Megan Overstreet jumps ahead at a 1:26.270, but Yanchi Lin, who is now in P2 in this current qualifying session with about 5.5 minutes left to go, he won in a dramatic photo finish last time out at Imola. That was an absolutely intense race, and I think if Yanchi Lin was running this season just to the absolute balls to the wall trying to run for a championship, he would definitely be a driver that we would have to consider for that. But speaking of, I mentioned that this is the second to last round before we head on over to the runoffs in a couple of weeks' time. I think it's a good idea to talk about the points, and we do have some clinching scenarios for these drivers this afternoon. We'll move on to the S1 category, Spec 1, the top of the top and the creme de la creme here in this series. Jason Green is leading over Sam Spinell in P number 2. The Brit has been mightily impressive so far this season, and in the races that he's run, he has put together some fantastic drives as an average finish of second and an average start of fourth, along with 4 wins on the season. However, I don't believe he is running with us this evening. I'm looking through the drivers that have set a qualifying time. I don't believe he has joined us, so with only 1 round after this, it's looking very good for Jason Green to win in that S1 category. Spec 2, meanwhile, it is led by the our Canadian broadcaster. Josh is very happy. He's feeling patriotic with Julian Ditchburn, the Canadian. He has been dominant all throughout this season. That is, I think, a 105-point gap. You can tell always great with math class back in the day. It's a massive gap regardless. Julian Ditchburn leading by 107 points over David Foy in P number 2. Julian Ditchburn, essentially, him taking the start in this race this afternoon, he will clinch the championship in that Spec 2 category. Philip Fernandez, Paul Stevens, and Peter True is going to round out the top 5 in that S2 category. And moving over to Masters as well, we have some clinching scenarios here, Charles.
Yeah, absolutely. Antonio Reis is leading the championship, 587 points, and he's got a nice 82-point gap to Chris Murakami. Dana Bowes in second with 475, so he's only about 30 points back. Jorg Monty 20 points further back in fourth, and Brad Cathcart is only 13 points back in fifth. And so, yeah, so still, looks like Antonio has got the measure of the group, the field today for the championship. But still lots to play for there. There's still, positions to be had. Obviously, good finishes are going to get you more points. And so there's some positions that still are up for grabs, depending on what happens. And this is a track that will bite some folks during the course of the race. And so, it's one of those that you have to be very, like I said, very precise and very patient, and try and get a good result.
We're looking at a new driver, I believe, here in this series, that being Reino Tani, the driver from Estonia in the number 838 car. He's currently P19 in this qualifying session. Getting back to the championship discussion, as I just noticed in the corner of my eye, Megan Overstreet and Yanchi Lin are tied right now. We saw this last time with the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors, how we had the other 2 drivers at the very north end of the grid tied in terms of their qualifying runs. So yet again, here in the Weekend Warriors series, this time with the Formula Fords, you can't get any closer than that. Megan Overstreet is marked ahead according to our live timing screen, so I think, I'm not sure how exactly iRacing breaks up those ties. They definitely have some sort of system. They go through the other digits that we can't show with our graphics, or it could be the first person to set the time. Charles, do you know what the tiebreaker is? Are you a bit more clued in on this than I am?
I've seen some of the internal data stream from iRacing, and it measures those times down to like 8 decibels. So yeah, so the gap is less than a thousandth of a second, but obviously, in the 10,000ths and 100,000ths, Overstreet has the advantage. So yeah, but it's a pretty precise measurement on the inside of iRacing software.
I think we should be very happy that our live timing software doesn't show 8 decimal points after the minutes and seconds, because that would be really tricky talking about the pole sitters. Like, okay, Megan Overstreet's on pole at a 1 minute 26.270000. That it just wouldn't roll off the tongue as well as with 3 digits. So that would also make our jobs a lot harder here in the commentary booth. So we're getting into crunch time here with this qualifying session. About a minute left to go here. I guess by iRacing it would be 1 minute with 0000 repeating seconds left to go. And it's still incredibly close there. Antonio Reese in P3, that is a very impressive run for him. Antonio Reese has done quite well throughout this season. Him and Jorg Mani have been our storylines throughout both the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors and the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors that we're broadcasting here this afternoon. They've had some up and down, topsy-turvy seasons, all the buzzwords you want to use to describe a challenging season for the both of them. They've had alien abductions, incidents, running out of fuel, particularly with the case of Antonio Reese at Brands Hatch earlier on in the season. They've had some ebbs and flows and ups and downs, but Antonio Reese has really kicked on the Cuisinarts. He's put on the afterburners here in the dying stage of this season, and I think he may have a really good shot of actually snagging a podium overall. That would be an impressive run.
Yeah, that would be a very impressive run. Yeah, we talk about the Masters class, and they're segregated by age and not by iRating. So we've got some very, very talented racers that just happen to be a little older than the normal iRacer. Jorg Mani and Antonio Reese, but they're obviously fantastic drivers. And should Antonio manage to get this championship, obviously well deserved. I think we've talked about Jorg Mani has been kind of snake bitten a little bit this season, but I know these guys are out here primarily. They want to compete. They want to have fun while they compete. Obviously, we talked about how this group of drivers is a pretty close-knit group. There's a little bit of crosstalk, but most of the time, even when there's incidents on track, it's sorted pretty quickly. They get it resolved, and they're back the next week fighting again.
These drivers are very familiar with each other, and they race each other as hard as they possibly can. It's great from our perspective in the commentary booth, mainly because we're not in these race cars and trying to claw for every single position. We're just calling the racing action. Throughout this season, it has been absolutely brilliant, and I think a lot of race fans are in the mood for some brilliant racing action, considering the Indy 500 is currently under a rain delay and probably will be between now and probably the midway point of the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors broadcast we have coming up later on this afternoon. Thankfully, here at the virtual Long Beach here in iRacing, perfectly sunny, 0% chance of rain. And that was a little bit of a question, because all throughout the week I was seeing drivers reporting rain during the official Formula 1600 races that they were doing. So thankfully here at the Weekend Warriors series, we don't have any rain affecting this race at Long Beach. If we did, we'd probably be talking about a whole lot of other stuff, and we probably wouldn't have even brung up the championship clinching scenarios that some of these drivers may be able to attain. Now, this series, there's not a fixed kind of point system like Formula 1 where only the top 10 score points. Everyone scores points in these races, so the amount of points you can get over a competitor fluctuates. We're basing it off of a number roughly of about 55, which would mean over 30 entries, which we do not have here this evening, but we still have a whole lot of cars out here on track trying to negotiate the 11 corners on this wonderful, very historic street circuit that is only 1.9 miles in length. So the checkered flag has been out for quite a long time here in this qualifying session. We may be able to get the starting grid for you in just a couple of moments time. Long Beach is going to be exciting. You better stay on the edge of your seat because it's going to be nuts. Megan Overstreet is going to be leading the field to green. Fantastic qualifying time from her, and starting alongside her with an identical qualifying time, 0.000 seconds separating those two. Yanchi Lin in P2, Jorg Mani in third, Antonio Reese in fourth, Jason Green in P number 5, the leader in the S1 category, David Foy in second, Julian Ditchburn in seventh, Chris Murakami in P8. In P number 9, we have Thortula the Brit, and Benjamin Harris is going to round out your top 10.
Yeah, starting in P11 is Michael McConnell. Jeff Jacobson is in 12th. 13th is Alan DeGassis in All Masters row alongside Dana Bose. In 14th, Tim Staino, Peter True, 15th and 16th. Philip Fernandez, 17th, Brad Cathcart in 18th, Paul Stevens in 19th, Reno Tanny in P20, Gary Wolbolt in 21st, Russ Telker in 22nd, Paul Jackson in 23rd, Nick Tolo in 24th, and Greg Holland rounds out the 25 car grid. Did not set a time, but it looks like he is on the grid for the start of the race.
25 cars around here is still going to be a nuts race. Lap traffic may be a factor if we see some incidents in the early stages of this 40-minute race we have coming up. We have pit stops to contend with as well. I'm not going to mention the words pile up and the hairpin because I'd probably manifest it if I did. We're in for a nuts race though. That is for darn sure. We're riding on board with Megan Overstreet. She is going to be leading them to green. And I must say Megan Overstreet has been fantastic to have her back in this series. Didn't see her through the first 9 weeks of this Weekend Warrior season, but she's had off on the Sundays now that the summer has arrived here in the U.S. It's fantastic to see her, and she's putting on some fantastic shows and had a pretty good sight. Well, pretty disturbing sight from her perspective, pretty funny sight from our perspective towards the end of that Imola race 1 week ago when she got a view of Jörg Mani's gearbox. Hopefully she doesn't have that same view this time. She has a view of a clean track in front of her. That Porsche pace car is going down pit road. The field is now in the hands of her, waiting for that green flag to come out, which it has now. The drivers are on their way. They're going to go through the meandering. It feels like a never-ending corner here in these Formula Ford race cars, rounding the right-hand sweeper before they have to slam on the brakes and try and get these cars woed up into turn number 1. It's a pretty good start there from Jörg Mani. Megan Overstreet is still going to be leading them heading into turn number 1. Jörg Mani and Yanchi Lin going side by side. Chris Murakami moving up some places as well. Philip Fernandez actually off the racing line a little bit, exiting turn number 1. Hopefully there's we have a big contact. I think that's Jeff Jacobson going for a jump. Some drivers making some huge contact heading through the fan at the very beginning of the race, which isn't too surprising considering the close quarters racing here. And that's another car going up into the air. Who is that? That's a 210 car that we just saw with some aerial acrobatics coming out of turn number 4. Who was that? And who were all the cars that we saw flying through the air very early on here?
Yeah, it was Paul Stevens, I believe, is a 210 car. And it just couldn't look like maybe he got some damage from the initial contact in the fountain. I was going to say that, you're so slow through that area that even if you make some, a little bit of contact, maybe not damage the car, but it definitely looked like he went straight into the barrier for whatever reason. And for the next turn, I guess in turn 4 probably, just couldn't get the car stopped, kind of bounced off and collected another car. As we see, Lynn has now taken the lead over Overstreet.
What I think I saw there on lap 1 that Yanchi Lin is now completing at the lead of the race, I saw ambition, but with ambition it creates action, and with action it creates chaos, and that's what we saw there at the very beginning of the race. Tim Stano has come in the 427 car, so I'm not sure if he had some outstanding damage that he wanted to repair at the very beginning of the race. You see him trundling down pit road and dropping his way down the running order. Not an ideal start for the American. He is going to be on the back foot moving forward, but Yanchi Lin pulled off the move to take the lead over Megan Overstreet. We may be able to try and find a replay to see how he was able to do that. It was a nice move. It was smooth as well, because both of those cars don't even have a paint chip on them. However, with the close quarters racing here and the close quarters nature of this track, I doubt very highly we're going to see some very clean race cars between now and the end of this. Going down the back straightaway, heading into turn number 9, riding on board with Yanchi Lin. It's a battle list. Late breakers heading into this corner. Lin has that inside line. Megan Overstreet, justifiably so, backing out of it, going side by side really anywhere around this track is going to invite that risk of having some big contact, and Megan Overstreet proving wise there, backing out of it, saying, hey, we still have a whole lot of racing in front of us. I'm not going to fight it at the end of lap 1.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a smart play. We've still got, most of the race left to go. We're only on lap 2. So yeah, smart play. Just we're going to see a lot of that over the course of the race. These cars getting that toe down the straightaway and making those late braking moves into the hard braking corners. Just to kind of follow up, I think that Alan DeGassis was the car that we were looking at, the 904, the blue car that we saw kind of spear the wall there at the start. He did tow back to the pits. Tim Stano, Paul Stevens, both involved. It was like maybe Philip Fernandez has dropped a couple positions, so maybe he was in the mix there as well. As we see a car coming out of the pits now, I could not see, or coming out of the pits, or was off on the left hand or right hand side at the pit exit area. I could not tell who that was.
believe that may have been DeGassis. That could have been who that car was that was slow before turn number 1. We're seeing some more drivers come into the pits. Greg Holland, Paul Jackson in pit lane. They're currently running in P20 and P21. So we're already seeing some split strategies with the nature of this track, though. Even with it being as tight, twisty, and technical as it is, they will have to pit yet again. Russell Teckler stopped in the box as well. He's been in for quite a long time. I think he had a crash, so we're going to take a look at a replay. There's the field before the calm before the storm, before we saw that big amount of drama at the very beginning of it. This was what happened to Tim Stano. We saw him come into the pits at the very beginning of the race. He started up towards the north end of the field, right at the start of that midfield pack. We're seeing him head into turn number 1 on the inside line. Ooh, it was very close with that curve there, and we're going to see whole lot of chaos break out here. A little bit of contact from the back, contact with the front. I think he may have hit Benjamin Harris there. Got a little bit of a clip there. I think that was with maybe the gases. And you can see those aerial acrobatics from Jeff Jacobson as he went through that found section. That is close quarters stuff there all around. Well, I mean, this track as a whole, it's a claustrophobic racetrack, regardless of what kind of car you're driving around. And we saw that put on full display there on lap 1.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just, you know, you get into that fountain section, and it's just a checkup. The car in front of you checks up, you have to check up with them, and then it's harder and harder braking behind as they just try and get through there and survive. And you just saw, as we saw earlier, just cars bouncing off each other trying to get through. And then I think we saw the gases there in the beginning of what was going to be a hard run into the wall. And a pit stop, and I now see looks like Nick Tullo is in the pits as well, so maybe he was involved in that as well. As we go back up to the front here, and there we see the
damaged car. Yep. Yeah, that's Tullo with what kind of modification would that be? I guess that would be built-in air conditioning to Nick Tullo's car with the front nose cone missing. Added ventilation, however, going down the one long straightaway that we have here at Long Beach, that is not going to help you at all when it comes to that straight line speed. I think we're going to try and comb through the replays here. There's about a billion that we need to take a look at. This was what happened to Nick Tullo, and you can see a car spinning there on the outside. Thankfully, no one hit him. However, Tullo heading in to the found section here, and looks fairly clean heading into turn number 4 there. There's so many sections where these drivers can get caught out by. This was, I think, a lap later. You can see Philip Fernandez right in front of him, maybe a little bit of contact with Fernandez. It was very close on the exit there, and yeah,
there we go.
That is a pretty substantial whack for Nick Tullo, and I guess he probably broke his wheel with that, so I think there may have been another incident a few corners down the line.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. I think if we track this a little further, that front left suspension is broken, can't make the turn, and he's turned his Formula Ford into a flip-flop with open toes. So he's going to be in the pits. Looked like he did not. Is he back out? I think he is.
I think he's back out on track.
Back out on track.
Got prepared. So.
Yeah.
I guess Nick Tullo's mechanics must have been drinking some Red Bull and nothing else to get that repaired as quickly as they could. That was a substantial wreck, and I could just imagine there's drivers that understeer wide and hit that outside wall in turn number 4 with a fully functioning race car. But with whoa, my God, that was a big slide for Megan Overstreet heading into the hairpin. Interrupted my thought there with a big sideways moment. Megan Overstreet thankfully kept it out of the barrier, but that is tricky. That hairpin incredibly tight there. We've seen many a pile up through that section. I know I wasn't going to mention that. I said that at the start. However, you can't go at any single race at Long Beach without mentioning that hairpin. And it's incidents has had over the years, seen many a pile up in IndyCar, IMSA races as well. I think Formula One probably had some pile ups there many moons ago. But Megan Overstreet had a big sideways snap heading into that section. That serrated. It was basically a rocky outcrop disguised as a curb heading into that hairpin. It definitely upsets these low-slung Formula Ford race cars, and I think that may have been what caught out Megan Overstreet.
Yeah, for sure. There's the inside curb there is you have to be very delicate with it, and as well. And it's one of those corners that you're basically on steering lock just to try and get
by the road. Oh, that was a big hit. Ditchburn trying to roll, it just doesn't have any sort of drive in the back end of that race car, and you can see the end stages of it. Seeing them go side by side heading into turn number 9, and I just did not have a good feeling about Foy. Dragged out a little bit, ran a little bit wide, and at any other racetrack with gravel and grass on the side of it, that is doable, but here at Long Beach, it's an entirely different story. Actually, I had that reversed. It was Ditchburn running way too wide. Outbroke himself, I think, heading into the turn 9, 90-degree right-hander, and just ran a little bit too wide. The two drivers at the 1-2 in the Spec 2 category in both this race and the championship are effectively out of it. That is going to sting.
That is going to sting. And yeah, it's that inside curve there in that corner is, it's got the serrated curve like you would normally see, but then it's got these little diamonds, you know, with the turtle shell curbs. That if you get way too deep into that corner, it just really upsets the car. And you know, once the wheels are off the ground, you really don't have any control at that point. As we see another spin there, another thing we're talking about.
Is that Yanchi Lin?
Doesn't look like it. Looks like it was Holland. Yep, maybe so. I think it just jumped back and towed back to the pits. So yeah, it's just, you know, the nature of this track is you know, precision is kind of the key. Is we'll get a replay here of Greg Holland coming down this back stretch here into the braking zone, and no, just over rotated, just late on the apex, could not get the car turned in, carrying too much speed, and just looped it around, backed it into the barrier, and decided he would just tow and get out of everybody's way.
I think he's actually left the session as well. So quick Alt F4 has ended Greg Holland's chances. That's 2 incidents in the first 10 minutes of this race. Not ideal if you're the driver of the 347 car. Jorgmani, whoa, that was close, heading out of turn at number 5. Jorgmani, I think he just saw his life flash before his own eyes. I think all of us here on this broadcast just saw Jorgmani's life flash before our eyes here. That was incredibly close. Jorgmani, he is always an aggressive driver. He pushes these cars to the absolute limits. We've said all throughout these broadcasts, he doesn't care for fuel saving. Jorgmani is always running at 100% or pretty damn near it, and we just saw that nearly bite him coming out of turn number 5. That, in my opinion, is the hardest corner on this racetrack. The camber is working against you, the track is falling away, and it's also inviting enough whereby you want to carry a whole lot of speed through there, but Jorgmani cutting it dangerously close on the exit of turn 5.
Yeah, absolutely. That was pretty tight, but managed to get through there without scraping the wall. So he did that better than a few Formula One drivers this morning.
Well, we can't really talk about the Formula One race since our producer Josh has not seen it. And anyone do not spoil it in the YouTube chat. Otherwise, I think our producer Josh has a right to block people from the YouTube chat if you do. So don't do that. Josh is judge, jury, and executioner here when it comes to the YouTube chat. But anyways, getting back to this race, 12 minutes in. Ooh, and who was that going off? I think that may have been Ditchburn.
Ditchburn,
again.
But yeah, and caught somebody else. Somebody else came through there and just,
I think it was Foy.
More to go, maybe.
I see Foy dropping back. Yeah, Foy's towed back to the pits, so deja vu between Ditchburn and Foy. What in the hell happened here? We're following David Foy heading into turn number 1. I think Ditchburn was a little bit farther up the road. Foy overshoots. Oh, that both of them did. Oh, that is awkward between those two Canadians. That is not ideal. I think there may be an apologizing contest between those two. Not ideal for their races to go 2 incidents in the span of basically 3 laps. Not good for those two. However, they're basically miles ahead of everyone else in that S2 category when it comes to that championship fight. It's not going to hurt at Ditchburn. He pretty much locked up the championship just by starting this race. Foy, on the other hand, that is going to sting. Having 2 incidents in 1 race. Ditchburn is left. Foy is still in the session. However, he is miles back.
Yeah, he's going to stick it out, I think. He's going to go back and get his repair and maybe jump back out on the race, right back on the track and run some laps. As this front group here of 5 cars is basically just kind of left everybody else. It's a pretty good sized gap back there. Because I think that car is actually, the car behind Green is actually a lap down car. So it's this group of 5 up front, Yangshi Lin, Monty, Overstreet, Race, and Green. And Green has been kind of hanging in P5 there. He's losing a little bit of time to the front 4, which means he's probably doing his normal fuel saving strategy. It's kind of weird. This is one of those that I think we've seen Apex legend Jamie Fluke actually run this 40 to 40 minute GT race with no fuel stop. So I wonder if these guys have got that thought in mind, and maybe I could go without stopping.
It could be a big factor in this race. At this track, there's not a whole lot of long flat app lists, this being one of them on that back straightaway. We're going to take a look at a replay to see Thortulo passing a little bit earlier on. I think the other replay may be a little bit glitched out on my end. So Charles, can you see what's going on with this?
Yeah, it's just a drag race down the back stretch. Murakami moves to the inside, takes the defensive line, and Tulo was able to make the move. Nice, easy pass. Not much fighting between him and Murakami.
Nicely played from those drivers. It's at a track like this, you can't really go for some balls to the wall, exciting and really aggressive passes, because if you do that, you're probably going to end up in the walls. We've seen many drivers do that already. Of the 25 drivers to take the start, currently 21 of them are still left out on the racing surface. Only 15 of them are still on the lead lap, of those 15 cars separated by 1 minute and 13 seconds. Paul Stevens being the last of them. Jeff Jacobson has come into the pits. This is, I think, his second pit stop. If this isn't his second pit stop, oh, this is his first time coming down pit road. That is astonishing, because he was that one car that nearly got sent into low Earth orbit on lap 1 with that big contact heading through the fan section. And Jeff Jacobson, all credit to the driver of the number 40 car. He toughed it out with whatever damage he picked up on that race car, and has now come into the pits 15 minutes in and perfectly in that window to make it home.
Oh yeah, no problem with him making it to the end. As we're getting the replay now, and I this time I'm pushed out.
I'll talk you through it. This is his view of the start of the race. Jeff Jacobson with probably the most interesting view of it, and he got a nice view of the solar system with that big jump that he has in the air right about now. Oh, I think I'm trying to figure out how exactly we would grade that in terms of his landing. I think I would probably give that like a 7.5 out of 10. I mean, he didn't damage his race car enough to pick up a meatball flag, so I guess he maybe have to up the points just a little bit for Jeff Jacobson. Not ideal to start off any sort of Formula race around Long Beach, but Jeff Jacobson, the fact he didn't pick up a meatball flag and had to pit to repair that damage earlier on is honestly a damn miracle.
Yeah, it's just shows you these cars are, they look like they will just break pretty easily, but they do have a little bit of stiffness to them, and they're a little sturdy. So the car was able to keep driving, and Jacobs did a good job. He just kind of hung out there. I don't think he really lost anything. He's down one spot from his original starting position. So he's kind of braked it, managed to get to his pit stop, and if he had any damage, he'd just take his fast repair, get his fuel, and he's good to the end of the race.
So touching back on the story of the top 5 runners in this race, we're coming up to the halfway mark very, very soon. Already 17 minutes have gone by in this 40-minute race, and we're seeing a lot of storylines develop. Of course, the attrition that we've seen in this race already is going to play a role in terms of how aggressive these drivers run. We have lap traffic to deal with as well. I believe that's Gary Wobolt that is going to be the next driver that our leader, Yanchi Lin, has to try and deal with. However, they may catch them going down the start-finish straightaway in the not-too-distant future. There's Gary Wobolt in the 902 car. I'll try that pronunciation one more time. Gary Wobolt there running in P number 15. And yeah, you can see Yanchi Lin catching up along with Jorg Mani. The gap between Mani and Overstreet is actually broken away a little bit, and I'm honestly shocked that Mani has that same pace in that race car. He hasn't backed off after that very close call with the barrier through turn number 5. And I actually took a look at how that looked on the broadcast, and he did just barely clip that wall. Not enough to give him damage. However, it hasn't shaken Mani's confidence either. He is still pushing that Formula Ford car to the absolute limit of control.
Yeah, that's Jorg Mani, though. That's the way he normally drives. He's going to give it 100%. He's going to try and get to the front. He's going to try and lead the race and win the race from the front. And it's just, his mentality. Yangtze, obviously, very, very adept. We've talked about him more, many, many times. How he did in the SCCA runoffs last year in iRacing, winning basically everything he jumped in. So, a very, very good driver of these cars. And Yanni, like I said, Monty is no slouch either. So, yeah, he's managed to pull a little bit of the gap. I think, obviously, as they get on these straightaways, the gap tightens up just a bit. So I don't think Overstreet race are just out of the woods yet. But it looks like... did Green come in? No, he fell back. So what happened to Jason Green? He's down in 9th.
That's very strange. Yeah, only 16 seconds back of our leader, York Monty, so he definitely did come into the pits, had some sort of mistake out there on the racetrack. That would not be good for the driver who had a chance to lock it up in that Spec 1 category after this race, running in the P number 9. And I'll try and find that replay. He's running effectively in no man's land right now, with about 5 seconds between himself and Harris in P8, and then the gap between Green and Bose being about 10 seconds right behind. This may be it here of Jason Green. We see a little bit of front-end damage there. So applying that air conditioning modification here to these Formula Ford race cars, we'll see maybe a little bit. Maybe this was the cause of that damage.
Yeah, it's coming down the front straight. Yep, his nose is still there. So my guess is he's going to miss somewhere, maybe get the outside. And he had Woolbolt in front of him, and there's the cause of the damage. So Woolbolt obviously made a mistake going in through 1, and basically you get a car sideways and the track's almost blocked at that point. And there's really nowhere you go. You're at full song trying to brake hard to get into that corner and get on the right racing line. And if there's somebody there occupying the exit, then you're pretty much done at that point, as you saw. So he's lost a considerable amount of time. He has now come into the pits and taken his pit stop. So he's got his repairs done, and he's back out on track. So now it's just a matter of just trying to hot lap and seeing if he can make up any time.
Yet again, another driver getting called out, being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Not ideal for Jason Green. He's still not out of it, though, as things stand currently. He's top running of the drivers to come down into the pits. The top 10 have not come in. Peter True is running at the front of that Spec 2 category. We haven't really talked about Peter True at all throughout this broadcast. He's running in the 10th position in that 388 car. And yeah, a pretty nice drive from the Brits so far, knowing well, like I probably just jinxed him. But with that drama that happened between Ditchburn and Foy is still in the pits, and Ditchburn Altaf Ford out of the session. So Peter True, I think this would be his first win in that Spec 2 category of the season. If it is, what a heck of a way to do it at a very tricky track.
Yeah, for sure. It's it's a war of attrition here at tracks like this. So just keeping the car clean is half the battle. So he's done a really good job. Yeah, he's not going to contend for an overall podium. But he's leading his class, and that's the important thing, is he's going to get more points than everybody else in his group. So that's a good thing. And like I said, Tim Stano, is doing a good job to run in P2 in that class, considering he was involved in that big fountain wreck. So he's done a good job to just kind of keep the car on the track and keep going. He's already had his pit stop, and that was on lap 1. I don't think he's going to be able to make it on fuel. Unless it's that close. So we'll see. He may have to come back in again, and that means he may have to give up that second spot. But still 18 minutes or so to go.
So we are officially into that second half of the race. We still are waiting for those drivers running inside the top 10 to come down pit lane, and I'm curious if those drivers running in those top 5 spots are going to come in together, or if they're going to split up their strategies just a little bit. And we're going to see a little bit of a technical glitch there. We'll try and get that. We'll try and get that resolved here in the not too distant future. But getting back to the subject and talking about the drivers running up towards the very north end of the field, Jan Schielen is still leading it. Monty is in P number 2, and that gap yet again is increasing between Monty and Overstreet in P number 3. That fight between Overstreet and Reese is going to be a dogfight between those two for that final podium position. Antonio Reese entering this round, he had a fantastic shot of sealing the deal in that Masters category, as we see some interesting lines being run at the north end of the field. And ooh, that was a pretty big, I heard some big scraping there, so I wonder if Lynn or Monty possibly hit the wall coming out of turn number 8. I heard the just almighty noise coming through my headset, but either way, they're still running at the front of the field. Jan Schielen and Jörg Monty, some of the best drivers in this series, and they are pushing it to the absolute limit. That handling looks a little bit wonky on Jan Schielen's race car. I think there may be some sort of suspension damage on there, because it looked like he was really pulling at the wheel heading through that sweeper of turn 10.
Yeah, I think if it was anybody, it was going to be Lynn. Monty was able to close up a couple of tenths, and then the group behind actually closed up about a half a second. So instead of those two car battles, we may end up having a 4-car battle before this is all said and done. And we still have a pit stop left, so pit stop is going to be critical for success here You're going to have to get it right, just nail it. As we see him coming through the fountain section, you can just see how tight this is and what you just have to kind of brave to get yourself through there.
So usually I leave the job of producing to our fantastic producer, Josh, but I'm curious, Josh, could we possibly switch to the roll bar camera, or a camera that we could get a good view of Yanchi Lin's steering wheel? Because I think he may be a little bit askew, unless my eyes were deceiving me. There may be a bit of suspension damage on that race car. I just want to see how much he's pulling at the wheel. I think it may be good there. We'll see going down the straightaway here. Yeah, maybe it's just some kind of weird handling stuff heading through turn number 10 with the fuel burning off. These cars are getting much lighter, so the handling is changing from when they started this race 24.5 minutes ago. That's a big snap heading through turn number 9. Yanchi Lin still pushing it to the absolute limit of control. So I think he may have gotten away with that. My ears must have been deceiving me, because I heard an almighty amount of racket as it came out of turn number 8 not very long ago. So I wonder if it was Lin or Monty making contact, or if my ears were just deceiving me.
What I'm wondering is, based on what I saw with that quick change of inputs there going into the braking zone, if it's actually on the rear of the car is where he made the contact, the left rear as opposed to the front. So if you bend those rear tires, you're going to get, it's just, as we see, I think maybe that was Monty off the wall too. So
that would be, I mean, it shows you these drivers just pushing it to the absolute limit of control. They're throwing it into these corners, even though they're running quite comfortably. I mean, the gap between Reese and Tulo is massive. It's over 10 seconds separating P4 and P5, so they're running in a pack of their own, running all by themselves, but they're still pushing it and trying to get 110% out of those race cars. And I think, I'll ask you this here, Charles, do you think it's a matter of when, not if, that one of these drivers bite off a little bit more than they can chew, or do you think they're going to hold on to it?
I don't know. It's just one of those that's, as we see Megan Overstreet looking to the inside of Monty, making the pass, take over second place. So now I'm wondering if Monty actually did hit the wall coming out of one, and it's actually done some damage to his car, because he has dropped off in the pace very quickly. These guys are so good, and girl, I'm sorry, but they're such great drivers. And but this is a track that you can't make any mistakes. You have to be inch perfect all the way around every lap for 40 minutes. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we see another one of these drivers just kind of bouncing off the wall again. A couple of wall scrapes, missing apexes. So you can just see what tight corners they've got there. And yeah, it's just everything you can do just to try and keep the car on the right racing line. So these pit stops coming up are going to be a godsend for these drivers. Any little imperfections they've given themselves will be wiped away here in short order. And then we're going to have the last 10 minutes or so of this race is going to be fantastic to watch.
And I think I heard someone hit the inside wall as they went through turn number 6. They're giving it they're giving it hell to try and maintain the pace that they are. And riding on board with Jörg Monty there through the first sector of this lap, he looks incredibly uncomfortable behind the wheel of that race car. Meanwhile, this man, Yanchi Lin, who we thought was the one that hit the wall, he's riding comfortably. He has a 1.5 second lead. He's catching up to lap traffic. I believe that is Stevens farther up the road. I'm not sure who exactly that is that he's catching up to. It could be Paul Stevens. Okay, Paul Stevens in P14 is going to be the next car to get lapped by Yanchi Lin, who has not come into the pits yet. Neither has Overstreet, Monty, or Reese. So that's a little bit surprising there for Monty. I guess he's waiting for one of the drivers around him to come into the pits. Then he's going to decide to bite that bullet and come down pit lane. But that's a little bit surprising for me, because based off the way that Monty was sawing at the wheel of that race car through the first sector of that last lap, something is definitely askew in that Formula 4.
Yeah, you would think that after something like that, if you're starting to bleed time to the people you're racing with, it might just be better just change your strategy and go ahead and come in and take your pit stop. I'm sure he's probably looking behind him saying, okay, when I pit, where am I going to come out? Who am I going to have to contend with? Who am I going to have to work my way through in order to run fast lap times? So maybe he just feels like he's not in a good window from his pit out lap, that he'll just come out in too much traffic and it's going to happen.
That is a very good point that we have neglected to mention so far in this broadcast. Traffic is huge. This track, it's hard enough to pass as is, but then when you throw in the mix of different strategies and drivers with much faster race cars feeling a little bit impatient, it is going to be a madhouse between now and the end of this race, which is coming up in only 11 minutes time. In this race has absolutely flown by, and I'm seeing none of them have come into the pits yet again. So maybe the point that we mentioned earlier of how fuel and fuel conservation isn't as big as we've seen throughout the rest of the season. Maybe these drivers are going to be eyeing a very late into the race pit stop. Maybe with about 2 to go, they could come down pit road, just trying to come into the pits, serving that one mandatory stop instead of actually needing to pull down pit road. I think of these 4, only Jörg Mani is the only driver that would realistically need to pit based off the damage, but he's still holding off Antonio Reese in P number 4. So I wonder exactly how bad the damage is on Mani's race car, the fact he still hasn't been persuaded to come down pit road.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing a good job of just kind of hanging in there. He is losing a little bit of time to Overstreet in P2. And Overstreet's obviously because I think, when you start passing people, you kind of lose time to the people around you. So I think that's created a little bit of a gap. So Lynn can be a little more comfortable up front, maybe not have to push the corner. And so we just, I think we just had another victim of a wall, probably Brad Cathcart. Looks like he's ended his race as we're coming down.
And to turn number 7, actually turn number 8, my apologies. Oh, that was a big hit. Him and Philip Fernandez. That was kind of a goofy looking accident, though, with Philip Fernandez pointing up to the heavens very briefly.
That is, and shockingly, and I won't say shockingly, but as we see Cathcart just come around and lose the rear. Once again, nowhere for Fernandez to go, who was running 3rd in the championship in Spec 2. So that's another one of our podium places in the Spec 2 championship that has got damaged and is going to have to come in and get repaired.
This is a Spec 2 disaster for a lot of these drivers, and taking a look at another angle, that is bizarre. Those two were linked very much together, and it looked like Philip Fernandez's car, once Brad Cathcart pulled back to the pits, it looked like Fernandez was hopped up on Jack or something like that. That was very strange. Usually around the streets of Los Angeles, California, you're used to seeing cars on bricks. Mani has come down pit roads. That's a first driver to come into the pits from that pack. Thortulo's in as well, along with Michael McConnell, who we haven't mentioned at all throughout this broadcast. Really, he's running a P9, exiting the pits here in the not-too-distant future. So Mani is the first of those front 4 to come down pit road. A little bit shocking, because we were thinking that they would come together and come into the pits in one big group. However, Mani deciding to be the first one to come down pit road. I think this may start a big trend with those drivers running in the top 3. I think they may try and respond here.
Yeah, you may be right. There's only 6 cars yet that still get to pit, as we see Lynn coming in, Overstreet's coming in as well as race. So yeah, the top 3 that were left out have decided that we need to come in now that Monty's out and got his fuel. So they're going to get their service done and get back out on track, and we'll see if the little undercut by Monty actually paid off for him.
Let's see how they exit out. This pit lane feels like it takes forever here in the world of iRacing. They're all stopped in their box. I don't think any of them overshot, which is a good message for all of them. We'll see how long they're stopped in the box. Lynn out and away, 12.6 seconds. Overstreet 11.5. Reese as well at 11.5. So Monty is going to lose that because he spent 14.8 seconds stopped in the box, which was one of the longest. You have to go back to Peter True in P13 to find a longer time in the pits. Even Chris Murakami, I think Chris Murakami may be able to jump him. Actually, no, it's going to be Reese Monty exiting out at P number 4. Murakami dropping back a little bit. He's running P3 in that Masters category, a nice run. We haven't talked about him too much throughout this broadcast. However, this is going to be I think the main fight is going to be between Lynn and Overstreet, at least for those drivers running in the podium positions. Michael McConnell and Thortulo are pretty close on track right now, heading into the found section at the start of lap 23. Those two, you can cover both of them with a blanket as they head through turn number 4. This is going to be tense. Yeah,
it's going to be tense, and Murakami is going to do his best to try and get up there and join that fight, as we see the 51 car Harris just in front as well. So this may be a 4-car battle before it's all said and done.
Ooh, this is going to be really, really tense between these drivers, separated by barely any air. Harris 16.6 seconds back of our leader, Yanqi Lin. McConnell 17.4, so less than a second separating these three drivers, and they're battling quite hard. It's for that final podium position in that Spec 2 category, the final position in that top 5. All of them are S1 drivers. All of them are going to be giving it hell, and it's going to be intense between now and the end of this race. 6 minutes left on the clock. So a lot left to be decided. This is the main closest fight that we have, and we're seeing Harris and Tulo go side by side heading in to the hairpin of turn number 11. You can see the nice line that Harris is taking to try and break that slipstream. It didn't really fool Tulo or McConnell, though, as they cut immediately down to that inside line, trying to salvage the small little bit of draft that these Formula Ford cars give off each other. Tulo now trying to get the move done. Tulo, my apologies, getting the move done on Harris heading into turn number 1. It's going to be very close. Tulo incredibly deep on the brakes, but he sticks that move beautifully. So Thor Tulo heading up into P number 5. Harris in P number 6, and McConnell may try and follow Thor Tulo here in the not too distant future and pull off a move to get by Harris.
Yeah, that's what he's going to be looking for. They've been in the fight for a while. I've been kind of watching that group with McConnell and Tulo. So yeah, it's going to be, can I get past Harris? Do I have the pace? And as we said, the more these guys start fighting amongst themselves, it's going to bring Murakami and Green, and potentially Green, up there as well. He's only a couple of seconds back of Murakami. So if these guys start, as we see, that was Harris off the wall. So that's going to make things a little bit easier for McConnell. Should be able to make this pass down the straight.
Well, and they nearly made contact again before they went into turn number 9. That was a substantial whack for Benjamin Harris, it must be said. He didn't pick up any sort of meatball flag from that, which I think is a blessing from the heavens, because that was a very substantial whack coming out of turn number 8. That's a tricky corner as well, because there's just so little margin for error. You have that wall so close to you, and really the racing line narrows from like 5 lanes all the way down to 2. So it's really tough heading through turn number 8. We may try and take a look at replay of that off that Harris had when he slammed into that outside wall of turn number 8. Thankfully, he's still rolling and may try and get a move done on McConnell here in the not too distant future. That was a substantial whack from Harris, and he got very flirtatious with that outside wall of turn number 1 at the very beginning of lap number 25. So these drivers are seeing the end of the race. They're seeing the end of the season as well, rapidly approach in front of them. So they are pushing it like hell to try and make any sort of time that they possibly can. Harris just bit off a little bit more than he could chew last time by.
Yeah, it's a little bit too much, as we're going to get the replay here. And we can see the cars coming around the final couple of corners.
I think this was a little bit after
already,
that. That was
already done. Yeah, I think they were coming through the hairpin. Yep. So we're going to get another replay here. And, yep. So we'll get Harris.
That was, I think, a lap before that. So that was while Harris was still savoring running in P number 5. But just actually, this is a move that Thor Tulo nearly put on him here. So we may try and stick with this just a little bit to see the move that Thor Tulo put off there. You can see the beginning stages of that. This may be it. This was Harris heading into turn number 8. Tried to hold off, and it was a bit of a contact there. McConnell, he was probably going to buy a lottery ticket after this race, because that was very close to him clottering the back of Harris's car on the exit of that corner. That was very close between the two of them.
Yeah, for sure. That was pretty close. It's close anytime you see a car kind of bounce off the wall. You know, your foot's kind of hovering over the brake, looking for an escape route, because it's just, it's the nature of the circuit, as we see Lynn coming around. Turn 7, is that right? And so yeah, just out front, he's not stretched his gap out. I don't know if maybe Overstreet made a mistake or not, but now he's got a commanding 3.5 second lead over Overstreet in P2, and then she's further stretched out over Monty. It's almost 5 seconds. So it's the big battles on track are going to be between Monty and Race. And then that group that we were following just a few minutes ago, Tolo, McConnell, Harris, Murakami, and Green, still trying to get up there and make that a 5-car battle, but not quite there yet.
What a contrast for Yanqi Lin between the last fast race at Imola Whirls. What, about thousandths of a second separating himself and Christian Gabanka after 40 minutes of heart-pumping racing action. That was also an amazing battle. Hopefully that ends up on the Apex Racing TV May highlights reel. I certainly submitted that, and that actually made its appearance on the late Apex here on Apex Racing TV every single Friday. If you want to check out that podcast and listen to all the ins and outs of sim racing with David Sampson and Sam Fitzpatrick hosting that show. But Yanqi Lin, that was a heart-pumping finish last time at Imola. He's on 2 to go, so he's going to be grabbing the white flag this time by. That was a big snap heading out of turn number 5. Yanqi, you want to take it a little bit easy. Yanqi Lin, he never takes it easy, though. I'm harkening my mind back to the race in Sebring earlier on this season when he was just drifting and coming across the line in P number 2, just trying to have a whole lot of fun. Monty and Reese, they've been close as well. They traded blows not very long ago, and Monty is now into P number 3. So those two settling out in the positions they were before that pit stop. I heard another clout with that barrier there, so I think maybe Long Beach is just, it's like iRacing is toying with their minds a little bit and just playing these, it sounds like a dish being thrown into a sink or something like that. It's not a very good sound to hear, but here's Yanqi Lin. He's rounding that final corner. He's going to be taking the white flag this time by. With a 4.1 second lead, I think Yanqi can take it a little bit easy over Megan Overstreet in P number 2. And I must say, Megan Overstreet, it's not going to be the win that she may have wanted starting this race from the pole, but Megan Overstreet, if she seals the deal off and ends up in P number 2, that is still a fantastic result for her.
Yeah, it's good to see Megan back for the last few weeks because obviously she's a great racer, and so it's always fun to have her out on. And even when we do the interviews with her, she's always very optimistic, even if it's a bad race or something happened during the race. She's always very complimentary of all the other drivers, and she just enjoys racing. And so it's always good when we have good drivers who enjoy coming out here week in and week out. So it's always good to have her back. And yeah, Lynn's he's still trying to push that gap. He could probably be dialing it back at this point, but he's just going to keep running his line and running his pace and finishing off with a very decisive victory.
This is going to be probably one of the most dominant wins that we've seen so far this season. Yanqi Lin, he is incredibly fast in this series. Week in and week out, he puts on dominant shows and drives that Formula Ford race car to the absolute limit, and he does it to perfection. Yanqi Lin has done that in this race at a sun-soaked Long Beach. Yanqi Lin is going to be the driver taking that checkered flag to win here for the second to last round of the season. Yanqi Lin in P at number 1. Megan Overstreet is going to finish in second. Very nice run from her. And Jorg Monty, after he fixed that damage on that Formula Ford race car, it turned into a rocket ship. He ends up in P at number 3. Fantastic results. And Antonio Reese has dropped back like a rock. I wonder what in the world happened to Antonio Reese. Did he have some sort of incident?
Oh
my
wow.
God, that is a very broken and battered Formula Ford race car. He must have had some sort of major off heading through the hairpin. He's had to tow back to the pits. Antonio Reese, that is going to sting. He entered this race with a chance of locking up the deal in that Masters category championship. It's still not going to be a bad race for him by any way, shape, or form, and I think he will enter the final race of the season at VIR in 1 week's time with the championship lead. But Antonio Reese, that was a big off on the last lap of that race. I was curious if he ran out of fuel on that. I saw that battered Formula Ford race car. I think we may have to take a look at a replay to see what in the world happened to Antonio Reese. I think this may be it here. Antonio Reese heading his way through the hairpin, heading his way through the turn number 10 corner, and ooh, it looks fairly clean so far. I'm trying to see. Oh, that was a major amount of understeer. I wonder if he had some sort of suspension damage on that race car, because that wasn't even close for Antonio Reese.
No, it wasn't. It just like car didn't turn.
Oh, he's out of gas. Yeah,
he's
look
out
at that.
Fuel.
Oh.
Yeah, and they just so he's just trying to, with no fuel left on board, he's just trying to carry as much speed through the hairpin as he can, and just overcooks it and drives it into the barrier. And so not a great finish for Reese. He's going to take a little bit of a hit as far as the points. Monty and Bose are both going to gain on him, but it's still I think he's still going to be in the driver's seat for the final round.
He entered this race with, I think, an 84-point lead or something crazy like that. He's still going to leave this race with a significant cushion coming into the final race of the regular season before the runoffs coming up. We've got a whole lot of action from the Ray Esports runoffs on June the 4th. We'll have the Ray Esports Racing League runoffs on Tuesday nights. That's going to be action-packed to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. And then that following Sunday, we're going to have the action from the Weekend Warriors runoffs to cap this season off. And to cap this race off, I think we'll take a look at the results here at Long Beach. I think all the cars have taken the checkered flag. If now we have a few more stragglers left to go here. And there you go. It's Yanchi Lin winning it over Megan Overstreet in P number 2. York Monty is going to round out your podium in P number 3, the top of the drivers in that Masters category. Then Thor Tulo in P number 4. I'm sure he's very happy to end up with a result like that. Michael McConnell ends up in 5th. Benjamin Harris just barely squeaks over the line in P number 6 with some damage that he picked up with that pretty significant wall cloud towards the end of that race. Chris Murakami ends up in P2 in the Masters category, P7 overall. Jason Green, not ideal from him, but a fantastic recovery to end up in P number 8. Jeff Jacobson, after those aerial acrobatics at the very beginning of the race, he ends up in a fantastic P9, and Dana Bose is going to round out your top 10.
Yeah, and finished in P11th is Peter True, is Spec 2 winner. Antonio Race with the last lap fuel issue finishes in 12th, first car a lap down. Paul Stevens, P2 and Spec 2 in 13th. Tim Stano rounds out your Spec 2 podium in 14th. Alan DeGassis in 15th. Reno Tanning in 16th. Paul Jackson 17th. Brad Cathcart in 18th. You scroll up. Philip Fernandez in 19th. Gary Wohlbalt 20th. Nick Tullo in 21st. Russ Telker in 23rd. David Foy and Julian Ditchburn 24th and 25th after their battles on the track. And Greg Holland finishes in 25th in the last car on the grid.
And those are your results from this race at Long Beach today. And we have a few drivers waiting in the interview waiting area. You can see the replay. It was at the very beginning of that race. Some drivers being and banging and roughing each other up before they grabbed the green. Action-packed and drama-packed from start to finish, incident-packed as well. And I think we'll have a chat with some of these drivers before we wrap things up from this first part of the Weekend Warriors evening here. Well, the Weekend Warriors afternoon, I should say. It's evening somewhere, and it's evening for Jorg Mani. We'll drag him in here and have a quick little chat. Jorg, that was a dramatic race from your perspective. End up in P number 3. Talk us through this race here at Long Beach.
What can I say? I was just not quick enough to follow Yanchi, and I bloody hell don't know how he does it to save fuel, drive longer, put less fuel in the car. I really don't know how he does it. But congrats to Yanchi, he deserves it. He was the quickest one. And I got probably quite lucky because I touched the wall several times and I still got away with 0 inks. So that actually quite interesting. It was quite fun to drive.
And we saw one of those very close calls with the outside barrier of turn number 5 during the first half of that race. When you have those close calls with the barriers at a track like this and in a car like this, what's going through your mind when you're seeing that barrier get ever so close to the side of your race car?
Just I see my face in the wall and just thinking, oh, lucky-wise it's virtual, not real, so I get away without having any bruise or something. That's what I'm thinking. Otherwise, maybe the car survives it, maybe not. And let's see, but it always survived. I got lucky.
Thankfully, this is a final street race of the season for you guys and gals in the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors Series. Next time out is going to be at VIR, a very different race course from the one we were running here this afternoon. So what do you think that race is going to be like in a week's time?
A draw festival, I guess. And it's actually not an easy track. It's usually a bit slippery, and yeah, let's see how that works out. So I think qualifying is not most important, but who is going to dive into turn 1, that's going to be most scary thing. I think it's going to happen there.
I think that race in VIR is going to be very interesting. You mentioned drafting. That's going to be a huge role in that race, but that long back straightaway is going to be broken up with that run through the infield running on the grand course. That is going to be nuts in a week's time. The season has been up and down for you throughout in both the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors and the Spec Race of Ford Weekend Warriors, but you've hit stride towards the end of the season, so what are your thoughts heading into the SRF race we have coming up this afternoon?
I surprisingly like the track, Winton, and I never drove it before this week, never in my life. And it took me about 2 days till I could do a timed lap, actually, without any crashes. But let's see what's going to happen. I'm not expecting anything on it.
That's going to be interesting. Our producer Josh had some words about that. He'll be in that race coming up later on this afternoon, as you will, Jorg. Thank you for joining us here in the commentary booth. Is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
I would like to give Joshua some luck in the next race then.
There you go. It's you always have to please the producer. I've learned that in my time broadcasting here on Apex. So
all right.
Well, Jorg, thank you for joining us here in the commentary booth, and good luck in that SRF race coming up later on this afternoon.
Thanks a lot, guys, and good evening then, by the way.
And that was Jorg Mani, who ends up the top of the Masters in this race. And Charles, we have some more drivers waiting in the interview waiting area. Who'd you like to have a chat with next?
Well, let's talk to our second place overall and our pole sitter for the race, Megan Overstreet. So Megan, second week in a row that one of the Weekend Warriors races finished with a tie for pole position. So down to the 1,000th of a second between you and Yangshi. Great opening, and it just looked like Yangshi just had the measure of everybody today once the race got going.
Oh yeah, I could not believe our qualifying pace there. Being within 1,000th of a second each other is pretty wild. But yeah, he definitely had the better pace in the race. I was trying my hardest to keep up, and he pretty much whipped by me really quick.
Yeah, it's so we were talking. I think if we went back and looked at this, I think actually the actual track won this race. A lot of attrition, lots of guys. I think we actually did maybe catch Yangshi and Jorg kind of scrape the wall a few times. Did you have any flirtations with the barriers during the course of the race?
Yes, I did. After the pits, I was trying to close the gap on Yangshi, and in turn one, or exiting turn one, I caught the tire barrier with my right rear. Got lucky and it was only a 0x and just did a slight bit of suspension damage, but luckily I was able to continue on. Then I backed off after that because I was like, yeah, this is not going to happen. The track is going to kick my butt if I keep doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just it's one of those races. It's fun for us to watch, but yeah, it's a nerve-wracking race if you're actually trying to drive this course. So I'll ask you the same thing we talked with Jorg about Winton coming up in the Spec Racer race. You have any thoughts about that?
I've never raced there, so I have no expectations other than I hear it's a hairpin in Curb City.
That's what I've heard as well. So we'll look forward to seeing how you progress during the course of the race. And so congratulations, and we'll let you give your thanks and shout outs to anybody you want to mention.
Yeah, thank you for putting on the broadcast. I'll do a fantastic job. Thanks to CV for putting on the leg, our sponsors, everybody out there that's watching, my family, and a big thank you to the veterans that never made it home. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Megan. Congratulations. We'll see you in the next race.
Thank you.
And that was Megan Overstreet, our pole sitter here at Long Beach. And we have one more driver waiting in the interview waiting area. That is Peter True, our winner in the S2 category. Peter, thank you for joining us here in the commentary booth. That was a nuts race here at Long Beach. So talk us through it from your end.
Hi. Yeah, that was crazy. Did I win?
I believe you did. First place in the S2 category. Well done.
I can't believe it. Yeah. The first lap was chaos from where I was, and then from there I just settled into a really nice race. Just plodding around, really. Yeah, fantastic.
We're actually just taking a look at a replay right before the very beginning of the race, seeing some contact heading through the hairpin. Hairpin's probably one of the trickiest corners on this racetrack, 11 in total. What was the hardest corner from your end, trying to get it right around this track?
Oh, there's a couple. The just, I mean, I don't know the names. I just just go around, but there's a couple that you just get a little bit wrong, a tiny bit off, and you're just into a wall, you know. But yeah, I was glad to survive.
I think many drivers in this this race that we just had were glad to survive. Thankfully for you drivers in this series, next time out at VIR is going to be, the barriers are going to be a lot less close than they were here this afternoon. So how do you think that race is going to be in a week's time?
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. You know, this whole season, this is my first season in any league really, and I've just been delighted by the whole thing. I've looked out on some decent positions, above my skill level really, and it's just been fantastic and welcoming, and I've just loved every minute of it.
It's been fantastic to have you, and congratulations on the win in that S2 category, Peter True. Thank you for joining us. Is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Let's say hello to Tammy. She'll hate it, but hi Tammy.
Alrighty, there you go, Peter True. Thank you for joining us. Hope to see you next time out at VIR. And that was Peter True, who joined us in the commentary booth. I think, I didn't know if he heard me at first. I think I may have cut him off. I apologize for that. So I think Charles, VIR in 1 week's time, even running on that grand course, which is pretty much just a very sad-looking tapeworm, it's going to be a bit less hectic than we saw here at Long Beach, but a heck of a lot more corners. We're going to round off the season in 1 week's time. What do you think that race is going to be like?
Yeah, completely the opposite of what we just experienced. You know, we're going country club racing next week at VIR. It is really a good circuit, especially for, you know, these smaller cars, these Formula Fords. Lots of room for them to work and make some moves, and some good braking zones. And it's a good test of a driver's ability, because there are some very difficult corners, and there's some high-speed corners that you have to navigate. Then, of course, obviously, we've got the nice long straightaway on the backstretch. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, as I do every week. And that's just going to be a fun race. I'm hoping we'll get our nice, 35 car grid back, and we'll put these drivers to the test, and we'll see who comes out on top.
We're going to have a whole lot of stuff to talk about when it comes to that broadcast. The championships, that's going to be a huge talking point heading into that race in VIR. We'll also have some news surrounding the Weekend Warriors runoffs that will be coming up the Sunday right after that. There's a whole lot to look forward to for that Formula Ford Weekend Warriors race in 1 week's time, and there's a whole lot to look forward to later on this afternoon. We've got the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors at Winton. Personally, it's a track that I can never make heads or tails of. It feels like purgatory in racing form, but hey, if these drivers put on a good show, then who cares how the track drives? That's going to be a great broadcast. Coming up a little bit later on this afternoon, and actually about an hour's time, is when that broadcast is going to start, and I hope you stay tuned for that. But as for this broadcast here of the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, that will do it. So for myself, Ron Mullins, Charles Bichelle joining me in the commentary booth, and Josh Wilkie doing a great job working on the cameras and the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so much for watching. Have a great rest of your 2 o'clock hour, and we'll see you all again for the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors in less than an hour's time.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, You owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.